We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. Soldiers of the cross. Every round goes higher, higher. Every round goes higher and higher. Every round goes higher and higher. Soldiers of the cross. Sinners, do you love my Jesus? Sinners, do you love my Jesus? Sinners, do you love my Jesus? Soldiers of the cross. If you love him, why not serve him? If you love him, why not serve him? If you love him, why not serve him? Soldiers of the cross. So, yes, Christians, we are to be reminded that once we are Christians, once we are a follower of Christ, we are soldiers of the cross. We are soldiers in the army of God. So, good night. And guys, I was expecting to see more people, you know. But let me just go through the life same way. The Lord will draw people to this life, because the Bible said where one or two are gathered in His name, He'll be there. So let me just, by faith, just hoping that as I go through the lesson, that more, you know, more, the Holy Spirit will draw more people to the life. So, this week's lesson is entitled Choose This Day, and this is lesson number 13, and it is the last lesson in this quarter. It is the last lesson for this quarter. So, next month, we'll be studying another character. We'll be doing another lesson study next month. I don't know which character we'll be focusing on next month, but this chapter that I'm doing tonight is the last chapter in the series of Joshua. In this series are in the book of Joshua, and it is entitled "Choose Ye This Day." Let us read the memory text. The memory text is taken from Joshua 24 is 15 from the New King James Version, and it reads thus: and if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourself this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So Joshua was telling the children of Israel. Joshua was getting very old in age, and he was telling the children of Israel that they must choose ye this day who they will serve. But for him and his household, he's gonna make sure he and his household, his immediate family, his wife and his children, he's gonna make sure they are serving the Lord. So let's dive into the lesson study. The final chapter of Joshua is set in the context of a covenant renewal ceremony, but this time conducted by the aged leader of Israel. So this is saying Joshua was reaching up in age. He was the leader of Israel, and he was aged. He was very old by this time. Although it's not a covenant itself, but rather a report of a covenant renewal ceremony. The chapter has the elements of ancient Near Eastern suzerainty treaties. One, a preamble in which the sovereign, the initiator, in, initiator of the treaty identified two, the historical prologue, which describes the relationship between the overlord and the vassal. The covenant stipulation asking the vassal to manifest total allegiance to the sovereign based on and motivated by gratitude. 4. Blessings for obedience and curse for breaking the covenant. 5. Witness to the pledge of the vassal. 6. Disposition of the document for future reading. And 7. Ratification of the covenant. So what Joshua was doing here, he was reminding, he was calling, he was getting old, and he was calling all the leaders of Israel, because at the time Israel never had a king, and he was getting old, and he, like Moses, that that appointed somebody to take his position. Joshua never, just at that time, Joshua never appointed no one to take his position, but he called all the elders and all the leaders of Israel to remind them of their covenant with their God. And this covenant is like a treaty. And once you sign a treaty, it was a treaty where the preamble is the preamble, in which the sovereign, which is the sovereign, will represent God, the which is the in initiator of the treaty, because God, so the sovereign the is God, which is the initiator of the treaty, or is the one responsible for the treaty. So the innate, the serene, the initiator of the treaty is identified, and two, it has the historical prologue, which describe the relationship between the overlord and God. 3. The covenant stipulation. The covenant stipulation. So the vassal, it would be like the people, and the sovereign would be like God. So 2. The historical prologue, which the historical prologue, it talks, it is one in which there's a relationship between the overlord and the vassal, between God and his people. The covenant stipulation there's a stipulation in which the covenant stipulation is asking for the people to manifest total allegiance to God based on and motivated by gratitude. They're supposed to have. So it's like he's telling, the treaty is like he's saying that the people should have gratitude to God. They must manifest total allegiance to God based on the and motivated by gratitude by what God has done for them. And there's another part of the treaty which talk about blessings for obedience. And if they disobey, may God curse will come upon for breaking the covenant. And 5, the treaty talks about witnesses to the pledge. There are people that they are witnesses to the pledge of the vassal. So they are witnesses, they're gonna sign a treaty, and they are witness to the treaty, they sign of the treaty. And disposition of the document. So the document is now signed, and there is witness to the document, and this document is gonna put they're gonna put the document down, to a safe place for future reading, for the future generation. And 7, ratification of the covenant. Joshua is close to the end of his life. No replacement is on the horizon. The covenant renewal is a reminder to the Israelites that their king is Yahweh himself, and that if they remain loyal to him, they will enjoy his protection. Israel does not need a human king. As a theocratic nation, they have to ever keep in mind that their only king is the Lord. You were there. Sunday's lesson entitled You Were There. Then Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem and place and call for the elders of Israel for their heads, for their judges, and for their officers, and they presented themselves before God. So Joshua was near to the end of his life. So Joshua is calling all they were and Israel did not have a king, and Joshua was getting old and he was not gonna appoint anybody like Moses appointed him to take over from him. Joshua did not have anyone that he's gonna appoint to take over after him when he died. So what Joshua did at the end of his life, he called all the elders of Israel. He called all the elders of Israel, he called their heads, he called their judges, and he called their officers, and they presented themselves before God. So they gathered at the place called Shechem. And if you remember, Shechem was the place that God made the covenant with Abraham. Shechem was the place where Abraham had built an altar upon his arrival in the land, and where God first gave him the promise of the land. So if you remember, Shechem is God had promised Abraham that he was going to give his Abraham descendant the land. So Shechem was a place where Abraham built an altar. When Abraham first stepped into Canaan, he was an alien in Canaan at the time, and God, he was in Shechem, in Canaan. He was in Shechem in Canaan. So he was a stranger, or he was a alien in Shechem, a place in Canaan. And God had promised him that he is going to give the land of Canaan to his descendant. So this was the place. So when God told Abram that he was going to give his descendant the land of Canaan, God had promised him. So there was a place in Shechem, in Canaan, known as Shechem. This was the place where Abraham had built an altar upon his arrival in the land. So Abraham was in the land of Canaan um long before. Oh, hi. Good night, guys. Thanks for joining. So, guys, we are looking at Joshua, and Joshua was, as you can see, Joshua was getting old. He was getting old, and he was, he soon die, because we get old and die. So Joshua, like Moses appointed Joshua, Joshua did not appoint anyone to take over from him, unlike Moses. So what Joshua did, Joshua was reminding the children of Israel. It's like he was reminding, it was like a treaty, not really like a covenant, but Joshua was reminding the children of Israel to them that they must pledge total allegiance to God, and and show gratitude for all that God has done for them when he brought them out of Egypt, out of bondage, and brought them into the promised land that he had promised Abraham. So Joshua now reached the end, was very old, and he was giving a warning to the people, and he was telling them to remember to show gratitude, and also to manifest total allegiance to God, because at that time Israel had no king. The only king that they have was God. And he was telling them that they must show total allegiance to God, and they should keep the commandments. So it was like a treaty. It was like a treaty that Joshua was signing with the elders the elders of Israel, with the judges, with the officers and the heads of Israel. Joshua called all of the heads of the elders of Israel. He called all the heads, he called all the judges, and he called all the officers, and he gathered them at Shechem. Shechem was where Abraham, when Abraham first stepped into Canaan as an alien, God had promised Abraham that he was going to give the land of Canaan to him. And when God promised Abraham that he was going to give him the land of Canaan, Abraham was in Canaan at that time as an alien, and the place where Abraham was called Shechem. And when God told Abraham that, he built an altar there to God. So now that the children of Israel God had fulfilled the promise and give Abraham descendant the land of Canaan through the leadership of Joshua. Now Joshua chose to go at that place where Abraham built the altar, Shechem, where Abraham built the altar, to offer and to build another altar of thanksgiving to God now, so that because God had now fulfilled the promise. Because when Abraham built the altar, it was just a promise. The promise was not fulfilled. Now the same place where Abraham had built that altar, Joshua now is now building an altar at Shechem for the fulfillment of the promise, because his Abraham descendants, they now conquer the land of Canaan. So Joshua, reaching it was very old now and ready to die. He called all the elders, all the heads, elders of Israel. He called all the heads, all the judges, and all the officers, because Israel did not have a king at the time, the only king that they have. And why did Joshua call them right there, at Shechem? Why did he call them there? To remind them that God had keep the promise that he had promised their forefather Abraham. And Joshua was reminding them that they must show total allegiance to God. So these are what Joshua was saying to them that they need to do. So listen now. Although in the final chapter of Joshua is set the context of a covenant renewal ceremony, but this time conducted by the aged leader of Israel, which was Joshua. Joshua was very aged at this time. Although it was not a covenant itself, but rather a report of a covenant renewal ceremony. The chapter has elements of ancient Near Eastern treaties. The pre it is preempt is like you're signing a treaty. So what have I here? Let me greet my people here. It's Glenford. And thanks for joining. And God, of leaves open seal my blessing. Thank you very much. And yes, and Almighty Israel is the best of planners and the only Savior. Open seal my blessings, King of David of Israel and ground. Open seal. Okay. Okay. Thanks for your input. Thanks for your input, and Food Campbell. Nice to have you here. So, as I was saying, this is the last lesson in the book of Joshua, and where Joshua said the memory verse is saying, and this was what the memory verse said, and it says, this is what the memory text says, and if it seems evil to serve you. So the memory text is taken from Joshua chapter 24, verses 15 from the New King James Version. And the memory text says, and it seems evil to you to serve the Lord. Choose for yourself this day whom you will my house, we will serve the Lord, said Joshua. So Joshua was aged, very old, and Joshua was reminding the people, you have a treaty with God. God is the treaty. God is the owner of the treaty. And so it says, number one, a prehem in which the sovereign the initiator of the treaty, which is God, is identified. Two, the historical prologue, which describe the relationship between the overlord and the vassal. So the vassal will be like the people, will be the people. The covenants stipulation 3, it talk about the covenant stipulation, what the covenant is all about, what the treaty is all about. The covenant stipulation asking the people to manifest total allegiance to God based on and based on and motivated by gratitude for blessings. So Joshua was saying, if you obey God, there will be blessing. If you so blessings for obedience and curse for breaking the covenant. 5, there's gonna be a witness. They're gonna have witness to this treaty, witness to the pledge of the vassal. So there's gonna be witness there to show. So when the people make allegiance to God, and as you say, you're signing a treaty. So when the people declare that they're gonna make a that they're gonna, keep the covenant, and they're gonna keep the laws, and they're gonna show allegiance to God. There's gonna be witness to what they said. So there's gonna be witness to the pledge that the people make. 6, the disposition of the document. So this document that is now signed, the treaty that is now signed, will be put down for future reference, for future generation to read. And 7, ratification of the covenant. So this is what Joshua did at the place in Shechem in Canaan, where Abraham first built the altar when God made the promise that he was going to give him the land. No, Joshua called the children of Israel, he called the elders, he called the leaders, he called the judges and the officers to that place of Shechem where Abraham first built the altar, and he called them there to remind them that the promise that God had fulfilled his promise to Abraham. The promise that he had made at Shechem when Abraham was in Shechem in Canaan as an alien. No, as his descendant, Joshua and the people of Israel they have now conquered the land. God has fulfilled the promise, and they are now in the land that God had promised Abraham. And there he gathered them, and he said to them, come to this place where Abraham first make the altar of sacrifice and build an altar. Come. So Joshua told the people them that they need to come to Shechem where the altar was original built by their forefather Abraham. He called them there. He called all the heads of Israel, all the judges and all the officers, and they present themselves before God. Shechem was the place where Abraham had built an altar upon his arrival in Canaan, in the land of Canaan, where God first gave him the promise of the land. Now, when the promise given to Abraham have been fulfilled, Israel renewed the covenant with a. So Israel now renewed the covenant. So now, when the promise given to Abraham have been fulfilled, Israel renewed the covenant with God at the very place where the first promise had been given. The appeal of Joshua recalls the word of Jacob to put away the foreign gods, which are among you. Put away. So Joshua is telling the children of Israel, if you have any foreign gods, put them away. If there is any foreign gods among you, put them away. So this is what Joshua was reminding, because remember, Joshua is making sure that the people follow the laws, guys. My phone. So Joshua is reminding, he's calling all the elders and put them. So he's saying, when I leave, when I die, you the elders, you the heads of Israel, you the judges, you the officers, you will be in charge to make sure that the people show true allegiance to God. You're the one gonna take over after me, and you sign a treaty that you're gonna make sure that the children of Israel follow the people, follow the laws of God, and show allegiance and don't turn away to idol worshiping. So now, so this is where the appeal of Joshua, the appeal, Jo- Joshua appealed to the people. The appeal of Joshua recalls the word of Jacob to put away the foreign gods which are among you. The geography of the event in and of itself conveys the call to demonstrate undivided loyalty to the Lord, rejecting all other gods. That is what Joshua is reminding. I won't be with you. I'm very old and I soon die. I'm asking you, Israel, to remember to show allegiance to God. Don't when I leave, I was a good leader, and I the Lord has helped us to win many battles. Many battles. He help us to conquer the land of Canaan, fight off all the enemies all around us. So when I'm old now, but I won't be with you. I want you elders, I want you judges, I want you officers to be in charge because we don't have a king. The only king that we have is God, and we want you to show true allegiance. And if you be obedient to the word of God, God is gonna bless you as a nation. But if you disobey and turn away from the covenant of God, curse is gonna be upon you. So Joshua is reminding the people, God is the main subject of the reviewed past I took. So God, this is what, listen now. God is the main subject of the renewed past. God took, God gave, God sent, God pledged, God did, God brought you out, God delivered you, and so on. Israel is not the main protagonist of the narrative, but rather it's but rather is Israel is not the main not protagonist of the narrative of the story, but rather Israel is the object. It is God who created Israel, not God intervened in the life of Abraham. They would have been serving the same idol worshiping gods that Abraham's father used to worship. Israel Israel existence as a nation is not the merit of any of its ancestors, but the exclusive work of God's grace. The fact that the Israelites are settled in the land is not a ground for boasting. The fact that the Israelites are now settled in the land of Canaan is not a ground for boasting, but the very reason why they should serve God, because God fulfilled his promise. The Lord's speech contains a shift that occurs 5 times between you and they, the fathers and this generation at Shechem are treated as one. Joshua is seeking to show what Moses confirmed already in Deuteronomy 5 verses 3, that the Lord did not make the covenant only with the fathers, but with all those presented at this moment of Joshua's speech. The vast majority there now had not experienced the Exodus. So guess what? While Joshua was making this speech to the children of Israel, these we must remember. These people that went over and crossed over the Jordan River, they did not experience the Exodus. They did not experience slavery. Listen, and you must wonder, when the children of Israel, when God used Moses and delivered the children of Israel out of bondage, out of slavery, God brought the children of Israel into the wilderness. And when while they were in the wilderness, God was preparing the Ten Commandments and preparing Israel to go into the promised land that he had promised Abraham. But he had them in the wilderness to purify them. He had taken them through the Red Sea. He baptized them through the Red Sea. It was a form of baptism. Carried them through the Red Sea. Now, when they cross over, so now that they leave Israel, and they were in they crossed the Red Sea, and they was in the wilderness. God was preparing them to go into the promised land. But before they go into the promised land, God had God called Moses up into the mountains to give Moses the Ten Commandments that he wrote on tables of stone. While Moses was up in the mountain, remember these people, these Israelites that came out of Egypt, they thought Moses died in the mountain, and they built a golden calf and start to worship, idol worshiping. And when Moses come down and see it, God told Moses, you see these people here? These people that are alive now that worship these golden calf, they are not gonna go into the promised land of Canaan, but descendant, the children that they have after them that was not living in this time, all of the children, all of the people that were living in the time of the golden calf worshiping, they what gonna happen? They're gonna die in the wilderness because of their sin. They wandered 40 years in the wilderness. After 40 years wandering in the wilderness because of their sin, they wandered in the wilderness 40 years. If they did not sin against God by if they did not sin against God by worshiping, that building that golden calf, it would have just taken them 7 days to cross over into the promised land. But because of their sin, they God have them wandered around those generation that was in the time of the golden calf. God have them wandering around the wilderness for 40 years until that generation died. And the generation died, and the new generation that was born into the wilderness, those are the generation that went over with Joshua into the promised land. So the people that Joshua is speaking to now is not these people that Joshua is speaking to now, they did not experience the Exodus. They did not cross over the Red Sea. It was their forefather that died in the wilderness. So these generation were born in the wilderness from their forefathers that built the golden calf. So Joshua is now speaking to these people now, and he's reminding them. So this is what he's saying. Let me read here. So had not God give had not no, I'm right here. The Lord's speech, listen now guys. The Lord's speech contain a shift that occurs 5 times between you and they. The fathers and this generation at Shechem are treated as one. Joshua is seeking to show what Moses confirmed already in Deuteronomy 5 verses 3, that the Lord did not make the covenant only with their forefathers Abraham, are their forefathers that died in the wilderness, but with all those presented at this moment of Joshua's speech. The vast majority there that was gathered, the vast majority that was listening to Joshua's speech at that moment had not experienced the Exodus. They had not experienced the Red Sea crossing. They had not experienced the golden calf experience. They were the new generation. So they were not there. They did not experience Moses. They did not know Moses. They did not cross over the Red Sea. But they are the one that get the promised land. Not the vast majority there now had not experienced the Exodus. Not all of them were at Horem, Horeb. Yet Joshua said that all of them were there. In short, the lesson of the past must be appropriated by each new generation. The God who worked for the ancestors in the past is ready to act on behalf of the present generation. So let us look at Monday's lesson. In sincerity and truth. Monday's lesson, in sincerity and truth. What what did Joshua appeal to the Israelite to do? What did Joshua appeal to the Israelite to do? What does it mean to serve the Lord in serenity, in sincerity and truth? Let us find out what it means to serve God in sincerity and truth. Joshua appeal clearly expresses the fact that the Israelites have to decide whether through loyalty to their creator to keep their uniqueness and live in the land, or to fade back into being among one among many idolatrous people with no clear identity, purpose, or mission. The choice is there whether they're going to serve God or they're going to go back into idol worshiping. Joshua's appeal is twofold. Israel should fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and truth. To fear the Lord does not mean a life of perpetual trembling and emotional insecurity. So to fear the Lord does not mean that you have to be in perpetual trembling and emotional insecurity. No, it's not that type of fear. It rather refers to reverence. So the fear of the Lord is talking about reverence. Reverence to God, obedience to God, not the fear. When they talk about the fear of the Lord, does not mean you have to be trembling and you have to be, when you hear about God, that's not the fear. The fear of the Lord is to show reverence and obedience and to Him. So it rather refers to the reverence and the awe that stem from the recognition of the unfathomable greatness, holiness, and infinity of God, and the one the one hand and our smallness. So the fear of God is to show reverence and awe that stem from recognizing that we have an unfathomable. So what this means, to fear God is to show reverence to Him and to recognize God as an unfathomable greatness, of His unfathomable greatness, of His holiness, of His infinity, and the infinity of God on one hand, and to show that we are small, show our smallness, our sinfulness, and finitude on the other hand. So we're in God is great. God is unfathomable. God is holy. God is pure. You know, on the other hand, we as human are fallible. We are sinful. We are nothing before God. So when we reverence God, when we fear God, we are fearing God because of His greatness, because of His holiness, because of His love for us, because of what He has done for us. That's the fear that God wants to show. We to show Him reverence. So this service that is required of Israel is characterized by two Hebrew terms, in sincerity and truth. The first term is mostly used as the object to describe the perfection of the sacrificial animal. The second term that describes Israel's service is truth or faithfulness. The term generally connotes consistency and stability. It usually refers to God whose character is intrinsically characterized by faithfulness, which is manifest toward Israel. A faithful person is someone who is dependable and trustworthy, and that is God. Basically, Joshua is asking Israel to demonstrate the same loyalty to God that God has displayed towards his people in the course of their history. It is not merely outward compliance to his requirement, but what springs from an undivided inner consistency of the heart. So God is telling Israel he not only want to show is that it must not be only an outward showing, but it must be coming from their heart. They must be sincere, want to serve him willingly from their heart. You understand? So their life should reflect gratitude, the gratefulness to God for what He has done for them. Basically, it is how we today should relate to Jesus as well. We should show gratitude to Jesus for dying on the cross for our sins. What does it mean to you to serve the Lord in sincerity and in truth? What are some of the distracting factors in your life that prevent your full devotion to God? What is causing you not to have full devotion to God? What is distracting you from giving your all to God, for giving your true allegiance and obedience and reverence to Him? What is distracting you from in our time now? Free to serve. Tuesday's lesson. As a true and faithful leader, Joshua respects the free will of his people and wishes that Israel would serve the Lord out of free choice rather than compulsion. That was exactly the point made by the deliberate use of the verb choose. In other passages, to choose describe Yahweh's election of Israel. Israel is free to say no to Yahweh after their divine election, but that would be nonsensical and absurd. Israel can say yes to God and continue to live, or they can turn their backs on Him and cease to exist. So, if Israel turn their backs on God, they will cease to exist as a nation because they will fall into idolatry with the heathen nation. So, Joshua is saying from the beginning, choose if it seems evil to serve the Lord. Choose for yourself this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So what is this telling us today? When we look at the stories and the lessons of Joshua and the people, how does it fit into our as Christian now? How does it fit into the church? How does it fit into our life? Choose ye this day whom you will serve. Would you serve God or would you serve Satan? Would you serve the one that died for you? Would you be gratitude? Would you show gratitude? Would you show allegiance to the one that gave his life on Calvary's cross? Or will your allegiance be to Satan? Or will your allegiance be to God? Choose ye this day who would you serve. It God be if it's God you're gonna serve God. If it's Baal you're gonna serve Baal. If it's gonna serve the devil. But the Lord require us and want us all to serve Him. He don't want none of us to perish. None of us to perish. So, guys, I'm gonna stop here now because I realize it's very late, and the message from this story is just as how Joshua is reminding the children of Israel that when he gone, they must he called all the elders and all the elders and the judges, and he told them that you are in charge to make sure that the people keep the commandments and make sure that they follow the footstep and make sure that they show allegiance to God. And if they don't show allegiance to God, Israel will not be a nation. Israel will fail to exist. This was what Joshua was telling the leaders. How does it fit into the church today? We have the pastors, we have the elders, we have the deacon. What are their mission? To go out into the world, go out and to tell others about God, to win souls. And on our mission, we are commanded to go and tell others about God, also in our own little way. And what does God require? What does Jesus require from the church after he gave his life for us? What does Jesus require for us to do? He wants us to show our allegiance to him. He wants us to serve him. He wants us to, to be grateful for all that he has done. But he wants us to serve him with a willing heart, a heart of love, and not a heart of fear in which we are gonna fear and tremble and think that he is a dictator. But the fear that the Lord wants us to fear him is to recognize that he is great, that he's powerful, that he's holy, and that he is, and to recognize all that he has done for us, and to be grateful and appreciate all, and with all of this show reverence, show respect. That is the type of fear that God requires for us even today as Christians. So guys, I'm gonna end the video right now. I just want to say thanks to um here. Thanks for your interaction. And let me see, what time is it now? I'm gonna check my phone. So guys, next week, this Thursday coming, I will be on at between the hours of 9 p.m. to 10. And guys, we're gonna look at another controversial topics, because Thursdays is for controversial topics. So Thursday between the hours of 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. is when we're gonna look at some controversial topics and what the Bible say about those controversial topics as Christians, what the Bible is saying. Because we are going by the law of God, by what God said, not of our own words and our own thinking. But what does God require? What does God say about these things? What should we do? So guys, next week, have a great weekend. Oh, tomorrow I'll be at church. And guess what tomorrow? Tomorrow is homecoming. It's going to be a great day at church tomorrow. It's going to be a great day. So guys, join me. All right. So what I'm going to do at church tomorrow at 11 a.m. I'll be on live 11 a.m. tomorrow at church. So come with me. I'll be taking you along to see what our homecoming day is gonna be like. A very special celebration at church tomorrow. We tomorrow is our homecoming day, and a lot of people, a lot of visitors, a lot of people that was from overseas, people that used to come to the church, that migrated or moved to other church, they're gonna come and visit, come back to visit. So that's what it means, homecoming day. So it's gonna be a fantastic day tomorrow at church. So you can also join the live, Glenn Ford Campbell, and thanks for joining. And let me see something. Glenn Ford Campbell 6059. I think is, let me look at Glenn Ford Campbell. Let's see. Glenn Ford Campbell 6059. Let me add Glenford Campbell 6059. So guys,